Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're listening in the world. How are you today? I wanted to share a few things with you today that might help you practically to have a brilliant day as often as you wish to have a brilliant day. And my hope is that's every single day. So here are some things that I wanted to share with you. First of all, there are things that happen in our lives that affect the way we feel about ourselves. And subconsciously, we don't realize that these things have a long-term effect on us. So I'll give you a really silly example. So, for example, something might have happened um, when you're young, and it's somebody that was wearing glasses, for argument's sake. And then you have this idea subconsciously that people who wear glasses behave this particular way. And so there's some subconscious reaction that you have whenever you see somebody that's wearing glasses. It's funny, I was just looking at myself in the camera and realized that I'm wearing glasses as well. So if you see me, I'm a great person, honestly. So somehow we take on this message. Some of it is conscious, a lot of it is subconscious. And in our subconscious, we equate someone who looks a particular way with the kind of feeling, either it's a feeling we like feeling, or it's a feeling we don't like feeling. And somehow what we're attempting to do is either recreate that feeling or avoid creating that feeling. So basically, it's a trigger. And in our lives, we build up all sorts of triggers. It could be from major things to really small things, like the smell of something, the feel of something, the look of something, the sound of something. Everything will affect us in a certain way, depending on our experiences of it in the past. So when the way it affects us is a way that we like, fantastic. And when the way it affects us is the way that we don't like, not so fantastic. So what can we do about that? Well, when we're going about our everyday life and we realize that something's happening that we're not particularly enjoying, something is being said or possibly not being said, something is being done, possibly not being done, and for some reason, it's having us feel something that we don't want to feel. Now, our tendency is to actually blame whatever's happening or what's not happening. It's either the circumstances or the person that's part of that circumstances. And it's very easy for us to believe that it's actually the perpetrator that's the issue. So, for example, if the way someone speaks to you has you feeling sad, our focus tends to be on what that person said. And what we want to do is persuade that person to speak to us differently so that we don't feel sad. So what we're going to do is instruct that person how to speak to us, or usually how not to speak to us, in order that we can avoid a feeling that we don't want to feel. Now, that's one way of doing it. I have a suggestion, because we have so many of those triggers. And what I mean by a trigger is that something happens, someone says something, someone does something, and it just triggers a feeling inside you. Now, some of the time that's conscious, some of the time that's not that's not conscious, it's subconscious, and suddenly you're feeling something that you don't want to feel. So that's what I mean about a trigger. So now what do? We've got those triggers. We can either go around instructing an awful lot of people how to behave around us, how to talk around us, how not to talk to us, how to look at us, not look at us, how to be with us, not be with us, what to do, what not to do, so that we can avoid feeling something we don't want to feel. And if what we're going to do is take the course of let's instruct everybody how to behave around us, we're going to have to instruct an awful lot of people how to behave around us in order to avoid triggering things we don't want triggered. So what might be another way? What might be a way that we could do this really efficiently? Because the trigger or the feeling is actually inside me. The trigger might happen on the outside, only the thing that it's triggering is something that's occurring inside me. So either I can ask people to behave or not behave in a certain way around me so they don't act as a trigger, or I can say to myself, okay, now I wonder why when someone speaks to me that way, or when someone says this or doesn't say this, I feel this. And then I can focus on doing something about why I feel a certain way. In fact, I don't particularly need to analyze it. There are ways of analyzing and getting to the reason why you feel the way you do when someone behaves or says in a certain way or says a certain thing. The point that I am making, though, is when you take responsibility for your own feeling rather than what someone's saying or doing, now you can do something very efficient about letting go of the reason the trigger is there in the first place. So then you have the possibility of reaching the point where someone can say what they usually say, someone can do what they usually do. Only your trigger isn't automatic, or that trigger happens very little of the time, or maybe even hardly any of the time at all. So my advice is, if you want to live at peace with yourself, and if any of you listened to me speaking a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that I feel is very important for me is to create peace in this world. And I remember the day that this trigger happened. It happened at what seemed like the flick of a switch, only I'm pretty sure that actually there were several events that actually created the point of the trigger. And when I realized that the reason why I was put on this earth was to create the possibility of peace in this world, and I started wondering, why don't we have peace? Why doesn't world peace exist when so many people seem to want world peace to exist? Is there some amazing reason why it shouldn't exist? And I know when I've spoken to some people, their answer has tended to be, it's very complicated. And my feeling is that actually world peace is really quite simple. It's about each and every one of us being at peace. So if I can take responsibility for being at peace with me and feeling peace from the inside, the chances of creating peace from the outside increase thousands of times. So I remember coming to the conclusion that perhaps the reason why world peace does not exist is because most of us are not at peace with ourselves. We have these battles every day, the battles of judging ourselves, the battles of judging other people. And so it's a challenge to create peace within ourselves, and therefore peace without ourselves, or rather outside ourselves, is also a big challenge. So in other words, if I'm not at peace, world peace cannot actually exist. So if each one of us can take responsibility for our own peace, for letting go of all the things that have us feeling things that are other than peace, feeling fear, feeling anger, feeling blame, feeling frustration, feeling disappointment, being judgmental, so that we can get to this place where we are at peace with ourselves and we're at peace with other people. And we recognize that each and every one of us is simply a human being on this earth attempting to get through all the challenges that we have in our lives, all the personal battles we have inside us. And just because the way I have chosen to live and I have chosen to manage my fears manifests itself in a different way to the way someone else might have chosen to live their life and allow their fears to manifest, doesn't mean that I'm better than them. It doesn't mean that there's something about me that they don't have. It simply means that the way I've translated something is different to how that person has translated it. And maybe if I can get to the place where all of my translation is to do with simply letting go of anything that has me feeling something other than I would love to feel, then I simply let it go so that I can inspire other people to do exactly the same. So I wonder what your thoughts are, everyone, about this. What are your thoughts about this, Marina? I'd love to hear from you on this.
Wow. You see, Aen, this is so profound, and I think world leaders should listen to you. Because peace is not the absence of conflict. At some point in history, some point of present, some point in the future is always going to be another conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But creating or developing this ability to handle the conflict and understanding that there is no path to peace. Peace is the path. It's all that takes for everybody to change the way they look at war, to change the way they look at peace. I'm so grateful you brought this topic. Is a tall order, is a tall subject, and most people will not step into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But each day, unless we have peace, unless we create peace within ourselves first,
Mm-hmm.
what are the chances for the world not to be at war? Over to you, Aen.
Thank you. I love what you said, Marina, particularly about the path. And, you know, my feeling is that when we create an intention, and we create an intention with commitment, somehow our actions tend to be congruent with that intention. It's not always the case because we're always going to have a challenge. Even when I create an intention to be at peace, to speak generously, to connect with people, I know that's not always going to happen 100% of the time. Only when I check with my intention and say, okay, I get that I might not have acted exactly congruent with my intention right now, and it's okay. I'm a human being. I'm letting that go. Only my intention is to continue to be congruent. Then we have a way in which to do that. Because I think most of us get to a certain place and we're happy with that place. And then we either want to hang on to it or find a way of recreating it. And actually, we can never totally recreate anything because whatever's just happened has just happened. Nothing that you do is ever going to be the same again. The only thing you can actually do is keep on committing to your intention to be a certain way. So I can commit to always being happy, no matter what's going on around me. I can commit to always being at peace, no matter what's going on around me. I can commit to connecting with everybody, even when occasionally my judgmental character desperately wants to make a judgment of the people or the person that I'm speaking to. I can keep on being in this place of checking with my intention, no matter what's just happened, rather than judging myself as having failed in some way. Because as soon as we make that judgment, there's a real pull to giving up. It's like saying, "Oh, you know, I've tried that being peaceful thing. I've tried that being happy thing all the time. I've tried connecting with everybody all the time, and I've tried all that non-judgmental stuff all the time. It doesn't work. so I'm not going to do it because, you know, it doesn't happen, right? So it's a really easy excuse to give ourselves that if we don't find a way of doing something most of the time, then we give ourselves the excuse not to do it. And the fact that it doesn't happen most of the time isn't a reason not to do it. In fact, it's actually the opposite. The reason to keep on checking back with your intention is so that you can get to the place where you turn it about on its head, where actually you feel happy most of the time rather than unhappy most of the time, or you feel peaceful most of the time rather than angry most of the time. And I think many of us don't actually realize how often we are angry. Do you know what? I just thought of something as I was speaking to you, because for all Muslims, Ramadan is coming up very soon. And one of the things that I love about Ramadan is that it's the concept of giving many things up. So you give up the idea of eating every time you feel hungry in respect, in a way, for other people that don't have that option, so that you can feel what they feel. And the other thing that you actually give up is being angry. And I remember saying this to a friend of mine, that Ramadan is not just about giving up food and drink. Ramadan is giving up all sorts of things that we do every day without realizing that we're doing them. And one of those things is to actually speak generously and let go of anger. And she said, oh, that's really great. I think I'm going to have a go at doing this. And I saw her a week later, and she said to me that she was amazed because she is one of the most placid people I've ever met. She's always really calm. Her voice is beautifully calm. And she's a healer. So she said to me a week later, I am absolutely amazed at how often I feel angry. And thank you for giving me the opportunity of just to be conscious of how often I'm angry about something, because I always assumed that I'm not an angry person. And so when we create the intention, we have a focus on it. So when I focus on, do you know, my intention is going to be at peace today, no matter what anyone says, no matter what anyone does, no matter what's happening around me. I'm going to focus on being happy today, no matter what's happening, no matter what anyone's saying to me. And just by the virtue of the fact that we're creating that focus and giving it attention, we start to observe how much of what happens around us we allow to affect us, when in fact it doesn't need to. I know it's easy for it to do that, only it really doesn't need to, because happiness and peace comes from the inside. And so when we start letting go of all the triggers that we had, all the reasons why we have for feeling bad about ourselves or angry with other people or feeling that somehow someone's treated us unjustly, when we just choose to be letting go of those things, peace and happiness are actually a very natural state to be in. And my feeling is, if we can all just take responsibility for those things and recognize that whilst other people and circumstances might be a trigger, my choice is still my choice. No matter what anyone says and does, it's my choice whether I'm angry about that or not. It's my choice whether I'm unhappy or not. So it doesn't matter what anyone is saying or doing. You can choose to feel what you want to feel. And when you're in this place of choice, when you're in the place of recognizing that it's not about what someone's saying or doing, it's not about the circumstances around me, it's just about what's going on inside me, your ability to exude peace and happiness and inspire that in other people expands enormously. And you start to feel like your heart is expanding, your awareness is expanding, your capability is expanding before any beyond rather anything you might have ever imagined. So I encourage everyone just to really make that commitment that I am choosing to be letting go of anything that might trigger me. I am choosing to be happy, and I am choosing to feel happy. I'm choosing to be at peace, and I am choosing to feel at peace. And it's what's going on inside me that's important rather than what's going on outside me that's important. So over to you, Marina.
Wow. And Mother Teresa said that peace begins with a smile. And that just about sums up. And it's so important that each one of us makes that decision by itself. Is a choice. So being at peace with yourself, you could make a very, very simple, take a little step, a tiny step, smile. Because that triggers everything within. And you are so right. Who could pretend to have peace? Because usually, unfortunately, peace is something everybody demands. So who could pretend peace outside unless you make peace inside? Doesn't make sense. It's like telling your signaling, driving your car, signaling left and turning right.
That's a really good way of describing it. Yeah.
So I know peace is a big word. People are not talking about peace, but yet each one of us needs peace more than oxygen. Because guess what? One day, unless you trigger the smile, unless you trigger your kindness, unless you trigger your good heart, unless you trigger your dream, something else is going to trigger you into something. You'll never recognize yourself. You'll become a bitter person. You'll become somebody who hates everyone, and because you hate yourself so much. So educating yourself into using the right triggers, as simple as a smile, could make a world of change and could change the world and could really trigger the peace in the world.
Absolutely.
I know we don't have much left, but I want you to remind our listeners that you are a survivor of a war. And they have to get in touch with you to understand that each time there are fireworks, perhaps you think of those terrible memories. And you know that triggering peace within is the only moral duty each one of us got. Over to you, Aen. What is the key message for today?
So the key message for today is you are as peaceful as you choose to be. You are as happy as you choose to be. So make a choice to be peaceful. Make a choice to be happy. Make that choice no matter what's going on around you and no matter how many times you have to choose it. So if you're choosing to be peaceful and for some reason you've spoken an angry word, make the choice again and keep making that choice till that choice just becomes really natural to you. And you find that actually you're not having to keep remaking it. It's just something you naturally feel. And the same for happiness. Just keep on making the choice. No matter how angry you feel, no matter how sad you feel, keep on making the choice every single day to be happy no matter what's just happened, and to be sad, to be letting go of being sad, and to be peaceful no matter what's just happened, and to be letting go of feeling any blame, frustration, disappointment, and anger, and just keep on making that choice from inside you.
Wow. And I was asking myself many times, who could trigger world peace? Who could trigger world peace? And for today, I found this message from Mahatma Gandhi. And I want our listeners to think about this. An eye for an eye, only ends up making the whole world blind. From both of us, until next time, please connect with Aen www.aenturner.com or send your questions to www.radioworks.world. Until then, it's goodbye from both of us.
Goodbye, and speak to you again soon. Bye now.